Hey everybody, what's up? This is Ariintheair. Welcome back to the channel. Stoked you're here. Today, I want to talk about asymmetric collapses. They're the most common deflation, malfunction that you're going to get in paragliding. So it's pretty important that you know how to deal with this. And not everyone does. Sometimes we see a lot of overreaction. Sometimes we see a deer in the headlights response. So today, I want to tell you everything I know about asymmetric collapses and how to deal with them. Okay, ready? Here we go.
See ya.
I'm paragliding!
See ya! Okay, so if you're watching this, and maybe you've watched other of my videos, thanks so much for watching. I love making them, and I do it trying to help you. So if you're getting something from these videos, please consider becoming a patron on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Ariintheair. The link is in the description below. And I have some new offerings for patrons, like coaching calls. I can help you with your paragliding. Okay, one-on-one coaching calls. Check it out. So let's get right into this. Today, I'm going to use a video that was made by Jocky Sanderson. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of Jocky Sanderson. He's likely the most prolific SIV instructor of all time. He's been teaching SIV since 1991, and he does a lot of SIV courses in Turkey and all over the world, really. So he comes highly recommended from me. If you'd like to book yourself on a SIV course, there's really no one better to do it with. That's jockysanderson.com. I'll link that in the description below as well. So, asymmetric collapses. They're very common. Every good pilot, every experienced pilot has had them. We're all between asymmetric collapses. I've had a bunch of them. I'm going to have more of them. So, usually, they're no big deal. So it's of critical import that you know what they look like, know what they feel like, and can induce them on your own, typically. So in general, I'm going to start this video by saying that, like anything that you're trying for the first time on a paraglider, it's best that you do it over water with a life jacket and a fast rescue boat with a trained SIV instructor. Okay? That's probably the way that most people should pull their first asymmetric collapses. Okay? After that, as a grown-up paraglide pilot, you should be able to pull an asymmetric collapse on your glider. You should be able to know when that's an appropriate place for you to practice that, and should be able to do that on your own, I have to say. Well, but like I prefaced, you shouldn't do that without having tried it over water first with a trained SIV instructor. But let's get right into this. He's going to reach up and pull the riser down. It's going to be a sharp pull, and there's a couple things that Jocky leaves out of this that I want to add to this, but I really like how he teaches this in this video, and I recommend you watch this video. I'll put the link in the description below, because he doesn't give you more information than you need, and I'm going to give you more information that you likely need. When you take an asymmetric collapse, for me, the most important thing is heading control. That you can control the heading of the glider. What's dangerous about an asym is that it can turn you into the hill, or it can turn you in, it can cravat and create a spiral. So the first thing that I always do, no matter the size of the collapse, I always control my heading. That usually involves opposite weight shift and some outside brake input. Okay, so let's watch one of these.
So just go around, just gentle, lean on the brakes, control it back out, and fly away.
It's really not a big deal. Okay, so you should be able to do that on your own. Like the video says, your height loss is between 5 and 20 meters on just a normal asymmetric tuck. Okay, so in short, the glider collapses. First thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to weight shift to the flying side, to the open side. I'm also going to use a little bit of brake input to control my heading. In this moment, I prioritize my heading control, and I also have learned through experience that using too much brake can get you into trouble, and I'll tell you why. It's important that you use the weight shift first and primarily, and then you add a slight amount of brake. What happens when the glider tucks is that the glider comes down and becomes a gigantic air brake, right? Like it's flying normally and then half of it collapses forward and it just becomes a gigantic air brake and produces a ton of drag. So it doesn't shoot, but it dives because it's basically like pulling a massive brake input on that side. So it dives over. At this point, you want to weight shift the outside and you're not trying to pull as much brake to like make it do a wing over the opposite way. You just want to stabilize the glider. You want to get it flying in a balanced way that you have heading control. Once that is done, you can pump out the collapsed side or cravat. I've made a video about how to clear a cravat. You can check that out. What I'm saying about too much brake is that when this air brake is on your glider, then your airspeed is slow. So if you add a bunch of brake, you slow your airspeed even more and you can stall the glider. So that's why it's important to use your weight shift primarily and be very gentle with the brake. If, for whatever reason, the tuck sticks and you start to rotate into an aggressive turn or a spiral, that's when the weight shift needs to be set from the moment that you're started, and the brake needs to be more and more aggressive. As the glider accelerates, you can pull more brake, right, and not worry about it stalling because it's going faster. Does that make sense? So use as much brake as you need to control the heading of the glider. Once you get heading control and you let the glider start flying in a stable configuration, then you can pump out whatever is left, if it cravats at all, which typically it doesn't. The other thing that Jocky talks about here in this video is that you want to wait until the glider is flying stably and you have heading control before you pump out the brake, because what we've seen, a lot of us have seen, is that basically a pilot will be flying, will take an asymmetric and immediately try to pump it out instead of getting heading control. What happens when you go too quickly to try to pump out the collapse is that you look at the collapse, which puts your weight onto the collapse, and you start pumping at the collapse frantically, which adds brake, which basically induces yourself into a spiral, right? So don't rush to clear the collapse. I know it's counterintuitive, but don't rush to clear the collapse. The glider will do it for you. We're flying modern paragliders. They are marvels of engineering, and you let the thing reinflate on its own. What you do as a pilot is you control your heading. Okay? Once your heading is controlled, you can look at the glider. If it's still cravated, stuck, tucked, you can pump it out with the brake. But you don't do that until your heading is controlled. Does that make sense? Okay. Moving on to accelerated asymmetrics. When you are pushing speed bar and you take an asymmetric collapse, the first thing that you do, what is it? Let off the speed bar. Let off the speed bar, okay? That's the most important thing. The moment that it collapses, you let off the speed bar as fast as you can, okay? After you let off the speed bar, the next thing is that you control your heading, weight shift primarily, a little bit of brake, as much brake as you need. Okay? It's not that complicated. Just in the same way, if you're taking an accelerated asymmetric, you need to be patient because the glider is going to have its own response, and the glider kind of like needs to do the response. Remember, if you watch a DHV test or an EN test, how they test the gliders to rate them, the pilots don't touch the brakes. and they push full speed bar, reach up, grab the riser, pull it down, let off the speed bar, and the glider just naturally turns and dives, and then will just open up on its own, okay? So one of the reasons that SIV is so powerful and important is because it teaches you to trust your glider and to trust the people who have made this damn thing. It's not a death trap. Those, I mean, they're kind of a death trap. Let's be real.
Okay, not too much, not too little. So I'll demonstrate again. Deflate. Okay, I'm going round. I'm now balanced in my turn here. And then as I'm turning, gentle pump, and it all comes out. So that's the key. It's not frantic, it's whatever's needed. I think people worry, you know, because they get shocked by big asymmetric collapses, they panic and overreact. That's the thing, don't overreact. If in doubt, put your hands up and it gets to a balanced flight or gets to something that you can recognize and recover from it. But there's no need to frantically pump or anything like that. It's just smooth, you roll onto a safe course and then you correct the problem. If you've got lots of space or you're in a thermal and you have a collapse, let's say on the outside, then just keep the turn on and just pump it out and keep flying. The key is prioritization. You've got to prioritize what is more important, whether it's getting the deflation out or getting your course right, then getting the deflation out. You've just got to be aware, and whatever happens, you always look at the ground. So if you have a big problem, collapse in a turn or a cravat or whatever, you always look at your problem, look at your ground, look at your options. That's the key.
As far as doing this yourself, like I said, you should do your first ones over water with a rescue boat, life jacket, trained SIV instructor. After that, you might want to ask your instructor what it might take, how much altitude, when is right, start learning about box decisions, start learning about self-motivated or self-taught practice, starting to practice these things. Because what you'll find is that you can grab the riser, pull it down, and fly the glider perfectly straight just with weight shift.
So now I'm going to demonstrate how safe a glider can be, even with sort of 40–50% of the wing gone. So I'm going to deflate it and hold it and keep flying straight, just with weight shift, no brakes. See my brakes in the keepers? So big deflation, weight shift away, a little bit of brake to start. Okay, now this is just weight shift, okay? So I've got, well, 45% of the wing gone and a little bit of weight shift, not much. See, no brake at all. I've got my left bum cheek is down and it's flying straight, nothing to worry about. Okay, so let go and a quick pump, firm pump, and it's out. Quite often, if you get a big deflation and you're quick to weight shift away and a little bit of opposite brake, then there's no problem at all.
This is an exercise that helps you trust your glider. This is an exercise that helps you get used to the configuration that you're going to see if you fly in thermic conditions. You are going to see an asymmetric deflation. And the more familiar with it you are, the better you're going to respond to it. So it's an important thing to learn. It's an important thing to practice. And it's really not that big of a deal. I totally know that you can handle it. I hope this video is helpful. Please consider becoming a patron on Patreon, checking out these videos and this Jocky Sanderson video. Thanks, Jocky, and my other videos here on YouTube. You guys fly safe. We'll see you on the next episode.